Hey guys, so just before we begin, I want to remind you that I am offering coaching, and so if you resonate with my message or you feel a connection to what I'm saying, feel free to click the link in the description and you can book a free discovery call with me. Otherwise, let's jump into the video. So today I want to share with you something that I always found myself coming back to. And the reason I always find myself coming back to this is because it always works. So this is the practice of staying single and retaining your energy. And for me, this approach, it feels a lot like you're on a fast track to basically getting the most amount of growth possible. Now, why? Well, because doing this simplifies absolutely everything. For example, imagine for a second all of your romantic and sexual distractions, and then imagine cutting right through them to give you all this time, all this energy, and all this focus to get incredibly disciplined and to properly optimize your life. You know, it can almost feel a little bit scary at first, like you're giving up this huge thing, but really when you do it, you find that you've always kind of wanted to do it because deep down you know that growing as a person is actually, better than anything else you'd want to be doing. Now, before we go any further, do you need to be doing this? And the answer is no. You can absolutely be in a relationship and still grow. Where I'm coming from is this kind of extreme perspective, which is how do we grow the maximum? And as we answer this, we can see that it basically involves a crap ton of independence. And so that's kind of my bias here as I share this message with you. So one of the biggest motivators to have this as your way of life is, and I'm just going to come right out and say it, is the peace, the freedom, and the quiet that comes from being single and having time and energy for yourself. In preparation for writing this, I actually looked at how long I've been single for, and it was something like over 1,500 days, and I can share with you that what that has allowed for is basically a ton of uninterrupted personal growth. And to be honest with you, what I've learned is that most of this stuff, most of this work, it's not what we do, it's what we hold back from. And if you've come to a point on your journey where you've realized what releasing your energy or falling in love can do to your focus, drive, and discipline, you become aware that even these things are very powerful distractions, right? And if you're anything like me, you know in your heart that you have to place your growth first and therefore limit or distance yourself from these things so that you can really go all the way and actually go after the life that you truly want. Now, will you be growing the maximum always? And again, the answer is no. You're gonna need to chill, you're gonna need to keep a balance, enjoy some pleasures, some comforts, and basically enjoy your life, because this isn't about being a monk. It's about having wise priorities that act as a foundation for your life. And so as long as you're sticking to these priorities most of the time, you're going to be okay, because they hold you in place to grow slowly, consistently, and without any big interruptions. Now, one thing we could ask is, what is it about relationships in specific that stops us from growing the maximum? Well, if you're very, very serious about your growth, like me, what you may find is that relationships can be very comfortable and actually can be full of temptations. And if you're trying to hit those real upper tier levels of personal growth, you're going to want to hold back from being too comfortable, and instead you're going to want to maintain some form of underlying restraint or underlying discipline that essentially anchors your life. And for me, a lovely way of doing this is in fact staying single and retaining, because it feels like you're always somewhat engaged in the work, right? If you're staying single and retaining, what you're going to notice is that in order to even do this, you have to maintain this kind of background discipline where you never fully give in to the things like, lust and orgasm. And that basically means you stay sharp and you never stoop too low energetically. You always maintain that foundation, because that's what holds you in place to grow steadily, slowly, and to the maximum. Now, coming back to being in a relationship, what else is it about this that prevents us from growing the maximum? Well, one thing that I've always noticed is how love and comfort can sway you and make you do stuff that you wouldn't normally do. So I'm talking about choosing to cuddle for an extra 30 minutes instead of going to the gym. I'm talking about releasing your energy sooner than you thought you would, because having sex more often can lead to that. I'm talking about choosing just slightly easier, slightly more comfortable lifestyle decisions. Why? Because that's what you feel like doing when you're in that comfortable relationship vibe. Now, is this okay? Of course it is. I've done this and it's some great karma to burn through. But what I've learned is that eventually your intuition creeps up on you. It prods at you and it says, hey, do you want to grow the maximum? Or do you just want to stay and chill in this limbo state? And if you listen to this intuition, you're going to realize that you have to clear this hurdle of pleasure and comfort if you really want to grow at the deepest levels. So for me, one moment that comes to mind when this kicked in was maybe like 6-7 years ago with a girlfriend of mine, where I was just lying there with this post-nut clarity thinking, man, sex is definitely something that you've got to do. You've got to explore that area of life and you've got to form a healthy relationship with it. But at the same time, I thought, man, I can really tell that this is not the ultimate way. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't know how, I don't know when, but eventually I'm going to do that ultimate way, whatever that is, whatever that means, whatever that looks like, right? And I can tell you that what that ended up being was this decision to stay single and to retain my energy, at least for the majority of the time. And again, if I were to pinpoint the number one thing that this does, it just simplifies everything, man. It just gives you that time and that energy and that focus. And if you're really into your personal development work, you will probably find that this trade-off is worth it. It all depends on where you are, what's going on for you, and how focused you're willing to get. Now, another way of looking at this is how you're just going to be making more disciplined decisions when you are on your own and when you are retaining, and that is the contrast with when you are recovering from romantic and sexual pleasures. And I'm sure you've seen this before, that when you get what you want, especially orgasm, your inner flame is dimmed, and you have to take some time for yourself to build that energy up again. And what I'm proposing here is that if you cut back on how often you need to go through this recovery phase, you grow way, way faster. You have way more uninterrupted growth. And this is the kind of thing that does allow you to do that deeper work on yourself. Now, I do just want to touch on retention quickly because for me, I do like the phrase retain regularly rather than retain always. And that's because you've got to be realistic about things like your own balance, your own discipline, how much you want to commit, nocturnal emissions, and the broader life phase that you're in. This stuff varies. And that's just to really hit home about how retention is a practice that you're always going to be learning about how to use, as it can always change depending on where you are and what you're trying to do. So hold this practice very, very lightly, but if you're able to, retaining most of the time with healthy breaks or healthy resets is generally a very stable approach. Finally, I want to remind you guys that you don't need to be growing the maximum, okay? Sometimes you're going to be lazy, sometimes you're going to be depressed, and sometimes you're going to be dealing with life stuff that means you can't really grow much at all, right? And that's okay. You've got to have perspective on this journey. So just do your best. Keep working your way up, and when you're ready, you can take this work even more seriously. But until then, just keep going, right? Just keep doing your thing. And always remember to stay conscious. You might not be able to always grow every single day, but you can always remain conscious. So do your best to remember that. Otherwise, that's it for me. If you've enjoyed this one and you would like more, then my friend, please do subscribe.